And for more now, we bring in ABC News contributor and Cardozo Law professor Kate Shaw. Thanks so much for joining us, Kate. Now, we're still hearing arguments that the impeachment was unconstitutional because Trump is no longer in office, that without a lengthy investigation, Trump was denied due process, and that Trump's speech is protected by the First Amendment. Are there merits to these claims?
Well, we'll have to see how the former president's team presents those arguments starting tomorrow, but I continue to find them pretty unpersuasive. So as to jurisdiction, right, whether the Senate has the power to hold a trial for an ex-official at all, it just seems to me it can't be the case that presidential misconduct late enough in a term is not subject to the sanction of impeachment, right? The Constitution contains this remedy for official misconduct of just this sort, and it just can't be right that if you do it late enough in a term, you escape this kind of accountability. Due process, I think the president's team did have time to prepare a case. I'm sure they could have had more, but, the managers, I am sure, would be facing accusations that they slow-walked these charges. They should have brought them sooner if we were, looking at a trial in March or April. And finally, on the First Amendment, I thought that Congressman Raskin was really effective today in making the case that the First Amendment doesn't really have any applicability in these proceedings at all. So even if you were a private citizen, you certainly don't have an absolute right to say whatever you want, and you don't have a right to incite violence. But even putting that to the side, public officials have very different First Amendment rights than the rest of us. So for better or worse, public school teachers or police officers can be subject to pretty serious sanction based on the things they say. And the First Amendment doesn't have much to say about it when they do. And so, the idea, so it's true about, senior federal government officials as well. When President Trump's senior cybersecurity official made the public statement that the election was free and fair and there wasn't widespread fraud, President Trump fired him. And nobody thought that was a First Amendment problem. So, public officials sometimes face consequences for their speech. And in my view, that's what impeachment is, a consequence. So the fact that it's speech, rhetoric at the core of the case, to me is not particularly relevant, but we'll have to see how the defense, gets kind of laid out starting tomorrow.
Just a little while ago, we heard from Senator Kramer that federal prosecutors or Democrats are free to pursue criminal charges in a court of law if the Senate conviction fails. Is there any precedent for former presidents facing criminal charges in court? And how do you think that the arguments that you've heard so far this week would play out if this were taking place in an actual courtroom? Do they have a case?
It is interesting. You've heard a number of Republican senators say things along those lines. So, former presidents, no, there isn't any square kind of precedent on point. There have been charges and trials of former vice presidents. So Aaron Burr was tried, actually not for killing Alexander Hamilton, but for treason. Vice President Spiro Agnew, Nixon's first vice president, pled guilty to tax evasion charges as he was leaving the vice presidency. It's likely, or at least it's possible, that President Nixon himself might have faced criminal charges. A lot of White House staff members and campaign officials had already pled guilty or been convicted for their involvement in Watergate, but he was pardoned by President Ford, which took that possibility off the table. So, it's certainly possible to criminally charge and try an ex-president. And I do think that the evidence that we have been hearing this week would make a powerful case for, either incitement of insurrection, which is a statutory crime, or seditious conspiracy. So it's very hard to know if you'd be able to get a conviction. Intent, state of mind, these are always difficult things to prove. But I do think there will be a judgment call to be made by the Biden Justice Department, whether it would set a dangerous precedent to charge an ex-president. There is certainly an argument that it would, or whether it would set a more dangerous precedent for there to appear to be no real accountability for these events. So that's, I think, going to be probably a subject of real debate inside the Biden Justice Department.
Right, really interesting arguments to be made there on both sides. Kate Shaw, thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.